Welcome to the Sleep Story Haven, your peaceful sanctuary where the whispers of ancient forests meet the gentle rhythm of moonlit shores. Here, time slows to the rhythm of your breathing. Worries dissolve like mist, and your mind finds the peace it's been seeking. Each story is crafted to guide you through enchanted landscapes and tranquil moments, designed to quiet your thoughts and prepare your spirit for deep, restorative sleep. So find your most comfortable position, close your eyes, and let tonight's gentle tale carry you to the peaceful dreams that await. Welcome to your Sleep Story Haven. Take a deep breath and let our story begin. The Honeykeeper's Dreams, a sleep story. Chapter 1, The Weary Seeker. The evening mist settled gently over the countryside as Elena walked slowly along the ancient stone path. Her footsteps creating a soft rhythm against the weathered cobblestones. She had been traveling for what felt like ages, carrying with her a deep weariness that seemed to have settled into her very bones. The weight of countless sleepless nights pressed upon her shoulders, and her mind churned with the endless questions that had driven her from her home in the city. Elena paused at a weathered wooden signpost, its carved letters barely visible in the dim twilight. The words seemed to shimmer before her tired eyes. The sanctuary of ancient tastes where time stands still. Something deep within her soul stirred at these words, a recognition that perhaps she had found what she hadn't even known she was seeking. The path curved gently downward, bordered by lavender bushes, whose purple blooms released their calming fragrance into the cooling air. Elena breathed deeply, feeling the tension in her chest begin to soften just slightly. With each step, the sounds of the modern world seemed to fade further behind her, replaced by the gentle whisper of wind through leaves and the distant trickle of water over stones. As she walked, Elena noticed how the very air seemed different here, thicker somehow, as if infused with the essence of countless years. The stones beneath her feet were worn smooth by generations of travelers, each one seeking something they could not name. She wondered how many others had walked this path before her, drawn by the same inexplicable pull that had guided her steps. The sky above deepened from pale gold to soft purple, and the first stars began to appear like tiny lanterns, being lit one by one. Elena found herself walking more slowly, her breathing naturally deepening as the peaceful atmosphere enveloped her. She realized that for the first time in months, her mind was not racing with worries about tomorrow or regrets about yesterday. Instead, she was simply present, simply walking, simply being. A gentle breeze carried the scent of night-blooming jasmine, and Elena noticed how her eyelids felt heavier with each breath. The path seemed to be leading her exactly where she needed to go, though she could not have said where that might be. She trusted in the ancient wisdom of the stones beneath her feet, in the guidance of the stars above, and in the quiet voice within her heart that whispered, "Rest is coming." As she rounded a bend in the path, Elena saw a warm light glowing in the distance, flickering like a beacon of hope in the gathering darkness. The sight filled her with a profound sense of homecoming, though she had never seen this place before. Her steps quickened slightly, drawn by an invisible thread toward whatever sanctuary awaited her. The light grew brighter as she approached, revealing itself to be emanating from the windows of a small cottage nestled in a grove of ancient olive trees. The building seemed to have grown from the earth itself, its stone walls covered in climbing vines, and its roof thick with moss. Smoke rose gently from a chimney, carrying the scent of burning applewood and something else, something sweet and mysterious that made Elena's mouth water and her heart feel suddenly, inexplicably full. She paused at the wooden gate, her hand resting on the smooth surface worn by countless other hands. In that moment, Elena felt as if she stood at the threshold between her old life of restless searching and something entirely new. The weariness that had driven her here was still present, but it no longer felt like a burden. Instead, it felt like a teacher, guiding her toward the rest she had forgotten how to find. The cottage door opened before she could knock, and a woman emerged, her silver hair gleaming in the lamplight. She was neither young nor old, but something timeless, as if she had existed in this peaceful place for centuries. Her eyes sparkled with warmth and knowing, and when she smiled, Elena felt the last of her defenses gently dissolve. "Welcome, dear one," the woman said, her voice like honey poured over warm bread. "I am Maya, the keeper of this sanctuary. I have been expecting you, though I did not know when you would arrive. Come, let me show you wonders that will help you remember how to rest." Elena stepped through the gate, and as it closed behind her with a soft click, she felt as if she had crossed into a world where time moved differently, where healing was not just possible, but inevitable. The cottage garden was filled with plants she had never seen before, their leaves and flowers glowing softly in the moonlight, as if lit from within. "What is this place?" Elena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Maya smiled and gestured for her to follow. "This is where the ancient wisdom of food and rest converge, where the oldest secrets of nourishment are kept alive. Tonight, you will discover tastes that have remained unchanged for thousands of years, flavors that carry within them the power to heal not just the body, but the soul." As they walked toward the cottage door, Elena felt her eyelids growing heavy once more. But this time, it was not from exhaustion. It was from the deep, peaceful drowsiness that comes when the nervous system finally recognizes safety, when the soul finally finds its way home. Chapter 2: The Golden Sanctuary. The cottage door opened with a gentle creak, revealing an interior that seemed to exist outside the normal flow of time. Elena stepped inside, immediately enveloped by warmth that seemed to emanate not just from the fireplace, but from the very walls themselves. The air was rich with the most intoxicating aromas she had ever experienced. Hints of vanilla and cinnamon, the deep sweetness of flowers, and underneath it all, something golden and eternal that made her feel as if she had stepped into a living poem. Maya moved with the fluid grace of someone who had performed these same actions countless times, each gesture deliberate and peaceful. She lit several candles with a long wooden taper, their flames dancing and casting moving shadows that seemed to tell stories of their own. The cottage walls were lined with shelves containing glass jars and ceramic vessels, each one glowing softly in the candlelight, as if containing captured sunlight. "Sit, dear one," Maya said, gesturing toward a comfortable chair beside the hearth. The chair was upholstered in the softest fabric Elena had ever touched, and as she settled into it, she felt her body begin to release tensions she hadn't even known she was holding. The fire crackled gently, its warmth penetrating deep into her bones, melting away the chill of too many sleepless nights. Elena watched as Maya moved to a particularly beautiful shelf, her hands hovering over various containers before selecting a jar that seemed to glow with its own inner light. The vessel was ancient, its surface worn smooth by countless hands, and when Maya lifted it, the contents within seemed to shimmer like liquid gold. "This," Maya said, her voice filled with reverence, "is honey that has been waiting for you for 3,000 years. Elena's eyes widened in wonder. 3,000 years? Maya nodded, bringing the jar closer to where Elena sat. Honey is one of nature's most perfect foods, unchanged by time, untouched by decay. This particular honey was sealed in clay vessels in ancient Egypt, discovered only decades ago by archaeologists who found it as fresh and sweet as the day it was made. The jar was warm in Elena's hands, and she could feel a subtle vibration emanating from within, as if the honey itself was alive with memories. The golden substance inside seemed to pulse gently, catching the firelight and reflecting it back in patterns that reminded her of sunlight on water. But how is that possible? Elena asked, her voice soft with amazement. Maya settled into the chair across from her, her movements graceful and unhurried. Honey is pure magic, dear one. It contains so little water that bacteria cannot survive in it. The bees add an enzyme that breaks down into hydrogen peroxide, creating a natural preservative more powerful than anything humans have ever devised. Time simply stops when it touches honey. As Maya spoke, Elena felt her breathing slow and deepen. The cottage seemed to pulse gently around them, as if the very walls were breathing in rhythm with her heart. The fire settled into a steady, hypnotic dance, and the candles burned with flames that never flickered, creating an atmosphere of perfect peace. "Would you like to taste it?" Maya asked, producing a small silver spoon that gleamed like moonlight. Elena nodded, unable to speak. She watched as Maya carefully drew a small amount of honey from the ancient jar, the golden substance flowing like liquid light. When the spoon touched her lips, Elena closed her eyes and let the honey dissolve slowly on her tongue. The taste was unlike anything she had ever experienced. It was not just sweet, but complex, layers of flavor that seemed to tell the story of every flower that had ever bloomed, every sunny day that had ever been, every moment of joy that had ever existed. She could taste the wildflowers of ancient meadows, the orange blossoms of groves that had vanished millennia ago, and underneath it all, a deep, abiding peace that seemed to flow through her veins like warm honey itself. As the honey dissolved completely, Elena felt a profound shift within her being. The constant chatter of her anxious mind began to quiet, replaced by a gentle awareness of the present moment. Her body seemed to sink deeper into the chair, as if she were being embraced by the cottage itself. "Do you feel it?" Maya asked softly. Elena opened her eyes slowly, surprised to find that tears were streaming down her cheeks. But they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of recognition, of coming home to something she had lost long ago. "I feel peaceful," Elena whispered. "For the first time in so long, I feel truly peaceful." Maya smiled, and her eyes seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. The honey carries within it the memory of perfect summer days, of flowers reaching toward the sun, of bees dancing in ancient rhythms. When you taste it, you remember that peace is your natural state. That rest is not something you must earn, but something you can simply receive. The fire crackled softly, and Elena realized that her eyelids were growing heavy once more. But this time, the drowsiness felt different, not the crushing exhaustion she had carried for so long, but a gentle, natural tiredness that whispered of deep, restorative sleep. "There is more to discover," Maya said, her voice seeming to come from very far away. "But tonight, we will begin with this, with the knowledge that some things are eternal, that some sweetness never fades, that some peace never ends." Elena nodded, feeling as if she were floating on a cloud of golden honey. The cottage around her seemed to pulse with a gentle rhythm, and she realized that she was no longer fighting sleep. She was surrendering to it, trusting in the ancient wisdom that honey had carried for 3,000 years. As her eyes closed, Elena felt the taste of eternal honey lingering on her tongue, a reminder that some things transcend time. Some flavors transcend understanding, and some peace transcends all the worries that had once seemed so important. Chapter 3: The Orchard of Impossible Fruits. Elena awakened to the gentle sound of birdsong and the soft morning light filtering through curtains that seemed to be woven from golden thread. She found herself in a small, comfortable bed that she didn't remember getting into, covered with a quilt that smelled of lavender and honey. The sleep she had experienced was unlike any she had known, deep, dreamless, and completely restorative. Maya appeared in the doorway, carrying a tray that held a simple breakfast and a cup of tea that steamed with aromatic herbs. "Good morning, dear one," she said, her voice as warm and soothing as the honey from the night before. "How did you sleep?" "I don't remember falling asleep," Elena said, stretching languidly. "I just drifted away on the taste of that honey." "That is the way of true rest," Maya replied, setting the tray on a small table by the window. "When we stop fighting sleep and start trusting it, we discover that peace has been waiting for us all along." Elena rose slowly, feeling lighter than she had in months. The breakfast was simple but perfect. Fresh bread with butter and honey, sliced fruit that seemed to glow with inner light, and the most delicious tea she had ever tasted. As she ate, she realized that her body was no longer tight with tension, her mind no longer racing with worries. "Today," Maya said, "I want to show you something that will expand your understanding of what is possible. Are you ready for another wonder?" Elena nodded, curious and eager despite the peaceful lethargy that still lingered in her limbs. They left the cottage together, walking through the garden as the morning sun painted everything in shades of gold and green. The air was crisp and clean, filled with the scent of growing things and the promise of discovery. They followed a winding path that led through groves of trees Elena had never seen before. The leaves were unusual shapes and colors, some silver green, others deep purple, and still others that seemed to shift and change as the light moved across them. The path was soft underfoot, covered with a carpet of moss that felt like walking on clouds. "Where are we going?" Elena asked, her voice soft with wonder. "To the orchard of impossible fruits," Maya replied, "a place where nature has created tastes that seem too magical to be real, but which have existed for thousands of years, waiting for those who need their particular gifts." As they walked, Elena noticed that her breathing had naturally synchronized with Maya's, and that both of them were walking in rhythm with some deeper pulse that seemed to emanate from the earth itself. The morning was perfectly still, as if the world were holding its breath in anticipation. They emerged into a clearing where the most extraordinary orchard Elena had ever seen stretched before them. The trees were ancient and gnarled, their branches heavy with fruits that seemed to defy description. Some were deep purple and perfectly round. Others were elongated and golden, and still others seemed to shimmer with an inner light. "This," Maya said, approaching one of the trees, "is the chocolate pudding tree. Its fruit tastes exactly like the richest, most decadent chocolate dessert you can imagine. But it's completely natural, created by nature's own alchemy." Elena stared in amazement at the fruit Maya was showing her. It was brown and soft, about the size of a large apple. And when Maya cut it open, the inside was indeed the color and texture of chocolate pudding. The aroma that rose from it was intoxicating, rich, sweet, and deeply comforting. "But how is that possible?" Elena asked, accepting the spoon Maya offered her. "Nature is far more creative than we give her credit for," Maya replied. "This fruit developed over millions of years, its unique combination of compounds creating a flavor that mirrors our deepest comfort foods. It's as if the earth itself wanted to provide us with the taste of pure joy." Elena took a tentative bite, and her eyes widened in amazement. The taste was exactly like the most perfect chocolate pudding she had ever had, smooth, rich, and deeply satisfying. But there was something more, something that regular chocolate pudding could never provide. This fruit seemed to carry with it a sense of childlike wonder, of simple pleasures, of the joy that comes from discovering something magical in an ordinary world. As she ate, Elena felt a warmth spreading through her chest, a feeling of contentment that had nothing to do with hunger and everything to do with the simple miracle of taste. Her body seemed to sink deeper into relaxation with each bite, as if the fruit were feeding not just her physical form, but her very soul. "There are more," Maya said, leading her to another tree. "This one produces fruit that tastes like vanilla ice cream. And that one over there creates berries that taste like cinnamon rolls fresh from the oven." They spent the morning wandering through the orchard, tasting fruits that seemed to have been created by pure imagination. Elena sampled berries that tasted like lemon meringue pie, plums that held the essence of butterscotch, and small golden fruits that burst with the flavor of salted caramel. With each new taste, Elena felt herself sinking deeper into a state of wonder and peace. The fruits seemed to be feeding some part of her that had been starving for beauty, for magic, for the simple acknowledgement that the world was full of wonders she had never imagined. As the sun reached its zenith, Maya led Elena to a shaded grove where they could rest. The ground was covered with the softest grass, and the air was filled with the gentle sound of leaves rustling in the breeze. Elena lay back, feeling the earth support her completely, and gazed up at the canopy of leaves above. "Why do these fruits exist?" she asked, her voice dreamy with contentment. "Perhaps," Maya said, settling beside her, "they exist to remind us that the world is far more generous than we believe. That nature creates not just what we need to survive, but what we need to thrive, to feel joy, to remember that life is meant to be delicious." Elena closed her eyes, feeling the tastes of impossible fruits still lingering on her tongue. Each flavor seemed to carry with it a memory of perfect moments, birthdays when she was a child, celebrations with loved ones, quiet evenings when all was right with the world. The fruits had not just fed her body, they had fed her memories, her dreams, her capacity for wonder. As she drifted into a light, peaceful doze, Elena realized that she was no longer the same person who had walked the stone path the night before. Something fundamental had shifted within her, some capacity for peace and joy that she had forgotten she possessed. The impossible fruits had shown her that the world was full of impossibilities, that magic was not just real, but available to anyone willing to taste it. The afternoon sun warmed her skin, and the soft grass cradled her like a mother's arms. Elena felt herself settling deeper into the earth, into peace, into the growing certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Chapter 4: The Spice Garden of Ancient Memories. The afternoon sun cast long, gentle shadows across the orchard as Elena and Maya made their way back toward the cottage. Elena's steps were slow and dreamlike, her body still processing the incredible tastes and sensations of the morning. She felt as if she were walking through a beautiful dream, one from which she had no desire to wake. "There is another place I want to show you," Maya said as they approached a wooden gate she hadn't noticed before. It was carved with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and flow in the dappled sunlight. A place where the very air will remind you of memories you didn't know you carried. The gate opened with a whisper, revealing a garden unlike anything Elena had ever imagined. The space was divided into neat sections by paths of white stone, each area containing plants that seemed to shimmer with their own inner light. The air was thick with the most intoxicating aromas, some familiar, others completely foreign, all of them combining to create a symphony of scent that made Elena's knees weak with pleasure. "This is the spice garden of ancient memories," Maya explained, her voice taking on a reverent tone. "Here grow spices that have been treasured for thousands of years, each one carrying within it the power to unlock memories, to heal, to transform." Elena followed Maya down the central path, her senses overwhelmed by the incredible richness of the garden. To her left grew plants with leaves that released clouds of cinnamon-scented air when touched. To her right, bushes heavy with star-shaped flowers filled the air with the warm scent of anise and fennel. Spices, Maya continued, are among the most precious substances on earth. Wars have been fought over them, continents discovered in search of them, empires built on their trade, but their true value lies not in their rarity, but in their ability to awaken something deep within us. They paused beside a plant with silvery leaves that seemed to glow in the afternoon light. Maya gently brushed her fingers across the leaves, and immediately the air filled with a scent that made Elena gasp with recognition and longing. "Lavender," Maya said softly. "But this is not ordinary lavender. This plant has been growing here for over 200 years. Its roots deep in soil that has been blessed by countless seasons of rain and sunshine. Its scent carries within it the memory of all the peaceful moments it has witnessed, all the restful nights it has blessed." Elena breathed deeply, and as the lavender's ancient fragrance filled her lungs, she felt her body relax in ways she hadn't known were possible. The scent seemed to penetrate not just her nose, but her very cells, carrying with it a message of peace so profound that tears began to flow down her cheeks. "Why am I crying?" she asked, though she wasn't distressed by the tears. "Because your body recognizes home," Maya replied gently. "This lavender carries the memory of every person who has ever been soothed by its presence, every child who has been lulled to sleep by its gentle fragrance, every weary traveler who has found peace in its embrace." They continued through the garden, and with each new plant Maya introduced, Elena felt layers of tension and worry dissolving from her being. There was rosemary that had been growing since medieval times, its piney scent carrying the memory of ancient monasteries and the prayers of countless monks seeking peace. There was sage that seemed to whisper secrets of wisdom accumulated over centuries, its silvery leaves holding the essence of deep contemplation. In one corner of the garden grew a plant that Maya approached with special reverence. Its leaves were deep green and glossy, and when she crushed one between her fingers, the air filled with a scent that was both familiar and exotic, warm, sweet, and deeply comforting. "Vanilla," Maya said, offering the crushed leaf to Elena. "But not the vanilla you know from bottles and extracts. This is the living essence of the vanilla orchid, one of the most precious flowers in the world. Each bloom produces only a tiny amount of the precious vanilla bean, and each bean must be hand-pollinated and carefully cured." Elena inhaled the scent of the fresh vanilla leaf and immediately felt herself transported to memories of childhood, birthday cakes, and warm cookies, her grandmother's kitchen on Sunday mornings, the feeling of being utterly safe and loved. But there was something more, something deeper than personal memory. The vanilla seemed to carry within it the essence of sweetness itself, the very idea of comfort made manifest. For thousands of years, Maya continued, vanilla has been considered sacred, a gift from the gods. The ancient Aztecs believed it could restore lost energy and bring back the capacity for joy. Modern science has discovered that vanilla's scent actually triggers the release of endorphins, the body's natural happiness chemicals. As they walked deeper into the garden, Elena realized that her breathing had become incredibly slow and deep. Each breath seemed to draw in not just air, but peace itself. The combination of scents, lavender, rosemary, sage, vanilla, and dozens of others, was creating a natural aromatherapy session, more powerful than anything she had ever experienced. Maya led her to a small bench at the center of the garden, surrounded by plants that seemed to pulse gently with their own inner light. The bench was carved from a single piece of wood, worn smooth by countless visitors. And when Elena sat down, she felt as if she were being embraced by the garden itself. "Close your eyes," Maya instructed gently. "Just breathe and let the ancient wisdom of these plants work their magic." Elena closed her eyes and let herself sink completely into the experience. The scents swirled around her, each one carrying its own gift of peace and healing. She felt as if she were being held by invisible hands, supported by the accumulated wisdom of centuries of growth and patience. The lavender whispered of sleep and dreams. The rosemary spoke of remembrance and clarity. The sage offered wisdom and understanding, and the vanilla promised sweetness and joy. Together, they created a symphony of scent that seemed to be recalibrating her entire nervous system, teaching her body how to relax, how to trust, how to simply be. As Elena sat in the garden, surrounded by the ancient wisdom of the spices, she felt a profound shift occurring within her. The part of her that had been constantly vigilant, constantly worried, constantly preparing for the next crisis, began to soften and dissolve. In its place arose a deep trust in the natural rhythms of life, a faith that peace was not something she had to create, but something she could simply receive. The afternoon light grew softer, and the garden seemed to pulse with its own gentle rhythm. Elena felt herself becoming part of that rhythm, her breath synchronizing with the subtle movements of the plants, her heartbeat slowing to match the patient pulse of the earth itself. When she finally opened her eyes, the world looked different. Colors seemed more vivid, sounds more musical, and the very air seemed to shimmer with possibility. She looked at Maya, who was watching her with eyes full of love and understanding. "How do you feel?" Maya asked softly. Elena took a deep breath, tasting the complex bouquet of scents on her tongue. "I feel ancient," she said, surprising herself with the word, "like I've been carrying the memory of this piece inside me all along, and I just needed to remember how to access it." Maya smiled, and in that smile Elena saw the wisdom of all the ages, the patience of the growing things, the eternal promise that peace was always available to those who knew how to receive it. Chapter 5: The Grain Fields of Eternal Abundance. As evening approached, Maya led Elena from the spice garden down a gentle slope toward what appeared to be endless fields of grain. The sky was painted in soft pastels, pink, gold, and lavender, and the air was filled with the gentle sound of wind moving through the grain stalks. Elena had never seen fields quite like these. The grain seemed to glow with an inner light, and the sound it made was like a whispered lullaby. "These are the fields of ancient grains," Maya explained as they walked along a narrow path between the swaying stalks. "Each variety has been growing for thousands of years, unchanged by modern agriculture, carrying within it the pure essence of nourishment that has sustained humanity since the dawn of civilization." Elena reached out to touch the grain nearest to her and was surprised by how soft it felt beneath her fingers. The stalks were tall and strong, their heads heavy with seeds that seemed to contain all the gold of the setting sun. As her hand moved through the grain, she heard a soft, musical sound, as if the plants were singing a gentle song of abundance and peace. "This particular field," Maya continued, "contains einkorn wheat, one of the oldest forms of wheat known to humanity. It has been found in archaeological sites dating back over 10,000 years, and its genetic structure has remained unchanged all that time. When you eat bread made from this grain, you are literally tasting the same food that nourished your ancestors at the dawn of agriculture." The path led them to a clearing where several different types of grain grew in neat sections. Elena could see the differences between them. Some were tall and golden, others shorter and darker, and still others that seemed to shimmer with an almost silver light. The air was thick with the sweet, earthy scent of growing grain, a smell that seemed to speak directly to some ancient part of her being. "Here is spelt," Maya said, gesturing to a section of grain that seemed to dance in the evening breeze. "The Romans called it the good grain, and it sustained entire civilizations. Its nutty, sweet flavor has remained unchanged for over 7,000 years." Elena watched the spelt sway in the breeze, its movements hypnotic and soothing. She found herself swaying slightly in rhythm with the grain, her body naturally synchronizing with the gentle dance of the plants. The repetitive motion was deeply calming, like being rocked by a gentle mother. And this, Maya said, leading her to another section, is amaranth, a grain so precious that the Aztecs considered it sacred. They believed it could grant immortality. And modern science has discovered that it contains all the essential amino acids needed for human health. The amaranth was different from the other grains. Its leaves were deep red and purple, and its seed heads were full and heavy. When the wind moved through it, it created a sound like soft rain, constant and soothing. Elena found herself listening to this sound with her whole being, feeling it wash over her like a gentle shower of peace. Maya led her to a small stone structure at the center of the fields, a traditional mill with a large wheel that turned slowly in the evening breeze. The sound it made was rhythmic and hypnotic, a steady grinding that seemed to echo the heartbeat of the earth itself. This mill has been grinding grain for over 300 years, Maya explained. The stones come from ancient quarries, and they turn at exactly the right speed to preserve all the nutrients and energy of the grain. The flour produced here carries within it not just nourishment for the body, but nourishment for the soul. Elena watched the mill wheel turn, mesmerized by its steady, patient motion. The sound was deeply soothing, and she found herself breathing in rhythm with the turning of the wheel. With each breath, she felt herself sinking deeper into a state of peaceful awareness, as if the mill were grinding away not just grain, but all the accumulated stress and worry of her modern life. "Would you like to help me make bread?" Maya asked, producing a wooden bowl and a small sack of flour from the mill house. Elena nodded, though she had never made bread before. There was something about the idea that appealed to her on a deep level. The thought of creating something nourishing with her own hands, of participating in the ancient ritual of bread making that connected her to countless generations of people who had performed this same sacred act. Maya showed her how to mix the flour with water and a small amount of wild yeast that had been cultivating for decades. The dough was warm and smooth under Elena's hands, and as she kneaded it, she felt a profound sense of connection to the earth, to the grain, to the ancient wisdom of nourishment. "Bread is one of humanity's oldest foods," Maya said as they worked together. "The process of making it is meditative, healing. The kneading motion releases tension from the body. The rhythm of the work calms the mind, and the anticipation of the finished bread fills the heart with quiet joy." As Elena kneaded the dough, she found herself entering a state of deep meditation. The repetitive motion of her hands, the warm smoothness of the dough, the earthy scent of the ancient flour, all of it combined to create an experience that was both grounding and transcendent. She felt as if she were participating in a ritual that connected her to every person who had ever kneaded bread. Every hand that had ever shaped dough. Every heart that had ever found peace in this simple, sacred act. The sun was setting now, painting the fields in shades of gold and crimson. Maya shaped the dough into a round loaf and placed it in a clay oven that had been built into the side of the mill house. The oven was warm and welcoming, and as the bread began to bake, the air filled with the most incredible aroma Elena had ever experienced. The smell of baking bread, Maya said, is one of the most comforting scents in the world. It speaks to something deep in our genetic memory, a recognition of safety, of home, of abundance. When you smell bread baking, your body knows that you are cared for. Elena breathed deeply, filling her lungs with the rich, yeasty scent of the baking bread. The aroma seemed to penetrate every cell of her being, carrying with it a message of nourishment and love. She felt her body relaxing even further, her muscles melting, her mind growing quiet and still. As they waited for the bread to finish baking, Maya led Elena to a bench overlooking the grain fields. The sun was almost gone now, and the fields stretched out before them like a sea of gold and silver, moving gently in the evening breeze. The sound of the grain was like a lullaby, constant and soothing. And Elena found herself growing drowsy as she listened. The grain fields teach us about patience, Maya said softly. Each seed must be planted at the right time, watered with the right amount of rain, blessed by the right amount of sunshine. The grain cannot be rushed. It grows at its own pace, following rhythms that have been established over millions of years. Elena nodded, feeling the truth of these words in her bones. She realized that she had been trying to rush her own healing, her own peace, expecting it to arrive on her schedule, rather than trusting in the natural rhythms of restoration. The grain fields were teaching her about patience, about trust, about the slow, steady process of growth and healing. When the bread was finally ready, Maya removed it from the oven and placed it on a wooden board to cool. The crust was golden and perfect, and when she cut into it, steam rose from the soft, warm interior. The bread was unlike anything Elena had ever tasted, nutty and sweet, with a depth of flavor that seemed to tell the story of the ancient grain from which it was made. As Elena ate the warm bread, she felt a profound sense of satisfaction that had nothing to do with hunger. The bread seemed to be feeding not just her body, but her soul, connecting her to the earth, to the grain, to the ancient wisdom of nourishment that had sustained humanity for thousands of years. The stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky, and the grain fields stretched out before them like a carpet of dreams. Elena felt herself growing drowsy, her body warm and satisfied, her mind quiet and peaceful. The sound of the wind through the grain was like a lullaby, and she found herself swaying gently in rhythm with the eternal dance of the fields. Chapter 6: The Ancient Olive Grove. The night air was soft and warm as Maya led Elena through a gate at the far edge of the grain fields. Beyond lay an olive grove so ancient that the trees seemed to exist in a realm beyond ordinary time. Their trunks were massive and gnarled, twisted into shapes that spoke of centuries of growth, of weather endured, of seasons witnessed. The moonlight filtered through their silvery leaves, creating patterns of light and shadow that shifted and danced like living things. "These trees," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper, "are over 1,000 years old. Some of them were already ancient when the first pilgrims walked these lands. They have been producing olives continuously for longer than most civilizations have existed." Elena reached out to touch the nearest tree and was amazed by the texture of its bark, smooth in some places, deeply ridged in others, worn by wind and rain and the passage of countless seasons. The tree felt alive under her touch, pulsing with a slow, deep energy that seemed to resonate with her own heartbeat. "Olives are one of the most perfect foods in existence," Maya continued, leading Elena deeper into the grove. "They contain healthy fats that nourish the brain and heart, antioxidants that protect against aging, and compounds that reduce inflammation throughout the body. But more than that, they carry within them the essence of peace itself." The grove was filled with the gentle sound of leaves rustling in the night breeze, a whispered conversation between the trees and the wind that had been going on for centuries. Elena found herself walking more slowly, her footsteps naturally adjusting to the unhurried pace of the ancient trees. Each breath she took was filled with the clean, green scent of olive leaves and the rich, earthy aroma of the soil beneath her feet. "In ancient times," Maya said, "the olive branch was the ultimate symbol of peace. When Noah's dove returned to the ark, it carried an olive branch as a sign that the flood was ending, and the earth was ready to welcome life again. The olive tree became a symbol of hope, of renewal, of the eternal promise that peace would always return." They came to a clearing where the oldest tree in the grove stood alone, its trunk so massive that Elena estimated it would take 6 people holding hands to encircle it. The tree's branches spread wide, creating a natural canopy that filtered the moonlight into a soft, ethereal glow. Beneath the tree, the ground was carpeted with fallen olives, each one gleaming like a small jewel in the silvery light. "This tree has been producing olives for over 1,500 years, Maya said, settling herself on a smooth stone beneath the ancient branches. "It has survived droughts and floods, wars and peace, the rise and fall of empires, and through it all, It has continued to offer its gifts to anyone who knows how to receive them. Elena sat beside Maya, feeling the solid presence of the ancient tree above her. The night was perfectly still, and she could hear the subtle sounds of the grove, the soft rustle of leaves, the distant call of a night bird, the gentle settling of the earth itself. Her body felt heavy with contentment, and she realized that she was experiencing a deeper level of relaxation than she had ever known. Maya reached into a small basket she had been carrying and produced a selection of olives, unlike any Elena had ever seen. Some were deep purple and plump, others were green and firm, and still others were so dark they seemed to absorb the moonlight. Each variety had been cured using methods that had been passed down through generations, their flavors concentrated and perfected by time and tradition. "Try this one," Maya said, offering Elena a small, dark olive. "It's from the tree we're sitting under, cured in sea salt and herbs for exactly 40 days, just as it has been done for centuries." Elena placed the olive in her mouth and bit down gently. The flavor was intense and complex, salty and rich, with hints of herbs and the deep, earthy taste of the ancient soil. But there was something more, something that went beyond taste. The olive seemed to carry within it the essence of time itself, the accumulated wisdom of centuries of growth and patience. As she savored the olive, Elena felt a profound sense of connection to the earth, to the tree, to the countless generations of people who had sat beneath these same branches and tasted these same flavors. The olive seemed to be transmitting some ancient knowledge directly to her cells, teaching her body how to slow down, how to trust, how to find peace in the simple act of being. "The Mediterranean diet," Maya said softly, "is famous for promoting longevity and health. But its real secret isn't just the foods themselves, it's the way they're consumed. Slowly, mindfully, with gratitude and presence. The olive oil, the bread, the wine, they're all vehicles for a deeper kind of nourishment." Elena nodded, understanding instinctively what Maya meant. The modern world had turned eating into a hurried, unconscious act. But here in the ancient grove, she was remembering that food could be a form of meditation, a way of connecting with the deeper rhythms of life. Maya produced a small bottle of olive oil, its glass dark and ancient. "This oil comes from the first pressing of olives from this grove," she said. "It's been made the same way for over 1,000 years. The olives are harvested by hand, pressed immediately in a stone mill, and the oil is stored in clay vessels until it's perfectly aged." She poured a small amount of the oil into Elena's palm, and immediately Elena could smell its incredible richness, fruity and peppery, with hints of grass and herbs. The oil was thick and golden, and when she touched it to her tongue, The flavor was so intense and pure that she gasped with pleasure. "This oil," Maya said, "contains the essence of hundreds of sunny days, the memory of ancient soils, the patient wisdom of trees that have stood for centuries. When you taste it, you're tasting history itself." Elena closed her eyes and let the oil dissolve slowly on her tongue. The flavor seemed to spread through her entire being, warming her from the inside out. She felt as if she were being nourished on a cellular level, as if the oil were carrying with it the life force of the ancient trees. As they sat beneath the massive olive tree, Elena felt her breathing slow and deepen. The combination of the night air, the ancient presence of the trees, and the deep nourishment of the olives was creating a state of peace so profound that she felt as if she were dissolving into the night itself. "Why do I feel so peaceful here?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because," Maya replied, "you're in the presence of something that has transcended time. These trees have witnessed the full cycle of life and death, of seasons and years, of joy and sorrow. They've learned the secret of endurance, of patience, of finding peace in the simple act of being. When you sit with them, you absorb some of that wisdom." Elena leaned back against the trunk of the ancient tree, feeling its solid presence supporting her. The bark was warm against her back, and she could feel the slow, steady pulse of the tree's life force. It was like being held by a wise grandmother, someone who had seen everything and knew that all things pass. That peace is always available to those who know how to receive it. The night air was filled with the scent of olive blossoms, sweet and delicate, promising another season of abundance. Elena felt her eyelids growing heavy, and she realized that she was no longer fighting sleep. Instead, she was surrendering to it, trusting in the ancient wisdom of the grove to watch over her rest. As she drifted toward sleep, Elena heard the gentle sound of the wind through the olive leaves, a whispered lullaby that had been sung for centuries. The tree above her stood sentinel, its ancient branches reaching toward the stars, its roots deep in the earth, a living bridge between heaven and earth that had been offering its gifts of peace and nourishment for longer than human memory could reach. Chapter 7: The Sacred Waters of Eternal Spring. Elena awakened to the sound of water, not the harsh rushing of a river, but the gentle, musical trickle of a spring that seemed to sing as it flowed. She found herself still beneath the ancient olive tree, but the world around her had transformed. The first light of dawn was filtering through the leaves, creating patterns of gold and green that danced across her face. She felt more rested than she had in years, as if the tree itself had been feeding her dreams with its ancient wisdom. Maya was sitting nearby, her silver hair gleaming in the morning light. Her hands cupped around a simple clay vessel filled with water that seemed to sparkle with its own inner light. "Good morning, dear one," she said, her voice as gentle as the sound of the spring itself. "Are you ready to discover the most ancient nourishment of all?" Elena sat up slowly, her body feeling loose and relaxed from her night beneath the olive tree. The sound of water was growing stronger now, and she could see, through the trees, the glimmer of sunlight on a flowing stream. The air was fresh and cool, filled with the scent of mint and watercress, and she felt a deep thirst that seemed to go beyond physical need. "Water," Maya said, rising gracefully to her feet, "is the first food, the source of all life. But not all water is the same. Come, let me show you water that has been traveling through the earth for hundreds of years, gathering minerals and energy, becoming something far more precious than simple H2O." They walked through the grove toward the source of the sound, the ancient trees seeming to part before them like curtains. The path was soft underfoot, covered with moss that released a fresh, green scent with each step. As they walked, Elena noticed that her thirst was intensifying, but it was a pleasant sensation, as if her body were awakening to a need it had long forgotten. They emerged into a clearing where the most beautiful spring Elena had ever seen bubbled up from the earth. The water was crystal clear, so pure that she could see every grain of sand on the bottom, every piece of smooth stone worn by countless years of flowing water. The spring formed a small pool before flowing away in a gentle stream, and the sound it made was like music, a constant, gentle song that seemed to harmonize with the beating of her heart. "This spring," Maya said, kneeling beside the pool, "has been flowing continuously for over 2,000 years. The water you see rising from the earth fell as rain on distant mountains centuries ago, and has been traveling through deep underground channels ever since, gathering minerals and energy from the living rock." Elena knelt beside the spring, mesmerized by the clarity of the water. It was unlike any water she had ever seen, not just transparent, but somehow luminous, as if it contained light itself. Tiny bubbles rose constantly from the depths, creating a gentle effervescence that caught the morning sunlight and threw it back in countless tiny rainbows. "The ancient Romans," Maya continued, "believed that certain springs were sacred, blessed by the gods with healing properties. Modern science has discovered that they were right. This water contains trace minerals that are essential for health, and its unique molecular structure makes it incredibly easy for the body to absorb." Maya cupped her hands and drew water from the spring, offering it to Elena. "This water has never been touched by pollution, never been treated with chemicals, never been stored in plastic. It is as pure as the rain that fell centuries ago." as fresh as the moment it springs from the earth. Elena accepted the water in her cupped hands, and as she brought it to her lips, she could smell its incredible purity. No chlorine, no artificial additives, just the clean, fresh scent of water in its most natural state. When she tasted it, she was amazed by its smoothness, its complete absence of any harsh or artificial flavors. It was like drinking liquid silk, so pure and clean that it seemed to wash away not just thirst, but some deeper dryness that she hadn't even known existed. As the water flowed down her throat, Elena felt it spreading through her body like a gentle wave of vitality. She could feel it hydrating her cells, clearing her mind, bringing a sense of renewal that went far beyond simple refreshment. The water seemed to carry with it the memory of its long journey through the earth, the patience of centuries, the wisdom of stone and soil. "How does it taste?" Maya asked, her eyes sparkling with knowing. Like the first water I've ever tasted," Elena replied, still amazed by the experience. "It's so pure, so alive. I feel like it's healing me from the inside out." Maya smiled and filled a larger vessel from the spring. This water carries within it the essence of the earth itself. When you drink it, you're connecting with the deepest cycles of nature, the rain that falls, the journey through stone and soil, the emergence into light. It's a reminder that we are part of these cycles, that our bodies are made of the same elements as the earth itself. Elena drank deeply from the vessel, feeling the water flow through her like a river of peace. With each swallow, she felt more connected to the earth, more aware of the incredible journey that had brought this water to her lips. The centuries of darkness, the slow filtration through rock and sand, the patient gathering of minerals, all of it had led to this moment of perfect nourishment. As she drank, Elena noticed that the plants around the spring were different from those she had seen elsewhere. They were more vibrant, more alive, their leaves greener and their flowers more vivid. The water had created its own ecosystem, a circle of life that extended in all directions from the sacred source. The native peoples who lived here, Maya said, settling beside the spring, considered this place sacred. They would come here for healing, for ceremony, for the simple joy of drinking water that connected them to the heart of the earth. They understood that water is not just a physical necessity, but a spiritual one as well. Elena sat beside the spring, listening to its gentle song, feeling the vibrations of the flowing water in her bones. The sound was deeply hypnotic, and she found herself entering a state of profound relaxation. The water seemed to be washing away not just physical impurities, but emotional and mental ones as well. Stress, worry, the accumulated toxins of modern life. In many traditions, Maya continued, water is used for purification, for blessing, for renewal. When you drink from a sacred spring, you participate in an ancient ritual of cleansing and rebirth. The water washes away what you no longer need and fills you with what you've been missing. Elena nodded, understanding this on a level deeper than words. She felt as if the water was literally washing her clean from the inside out, removing layers of stress and tension that had built up over years of hurried living. In their place, the water was leaving a sense of clarity, of peace, of connection to something eternal and pure. As the morning sun climbed higher, the spring caught its light and threw it back in dancing patterns that seemed to tell stories of rain and mountains, of underground rivers and ancient aquifers. Elena found herself mesmerized by these patterns, feeling as if she were reading the autobiography of the water itself. Water teaches us about flow, Maya said softly. It doesn't fight obstacles, it finds a way around them. It doesn't rush, it moves at its own pace. It doesn't resist, it adapts to whatever container holds it. And yet, given enough time, it can carve through the hardest stone. Elena felt these words settling into her consciousness like drops of water soaking into dry earth. She had spent so much of her life fighting, rushing, resisting. The water was teaching her a different way, the way of patience, of gentleness, of trusting in the natural flow of life. As they sat by the spring, Elena felt her breathing synchronize with the gentle rhythm of the flowing water. Each breath in was like drinking from the source of life itself, and each breath out was like releasing something she no longer needed. The water continued its ancient song, and Elena felt herself becoming part of that song, part of the eternal cycle of rain and river, of earth and sky. The sacred spring had given her more than hydration. It had given her a sense of her place in the great web of life, a reminder that she was made of the same elements as the earth itself, that the water flowing in her veins was connected to the water flowing in the stream, that she was never truly separate from the source of all life. Chapter 8: The Mushroom Cathedral. As the morning light grew stronger, Maya led Elena away from the sacred spring along a path that seemed to wind deeper into the earth itself. The air grew cooler and more humid, filled with the rich, earthy scent of decomposing leaves and the mysterious aroma of fungi. Elena felt her consciousness shifting, becoming more sensitive to the subtle energies around her, as if the sacred water had awakened some dormant awareness within her. The path led them to the edge of a forest unlike any Elena had ever seen. The trees here were ancient beyond measure, their trunks so massive that they seemed like living cathedral columns, reaching toward a canopy so dense that it filtered the sunlight into a soft, green glow. The forest floor was carpeted with moss so thick and soft that each step felt like walking on clouds. "This," Maya said, her voice filled with reverence, "is the Mushroom Cathedral. Here, in the deep shadows of the ancient forest, grow fungi that have been nourishing and healing humanity for thousands of years. These are not ordinary mushrooms. They are the Earth's own pharmacy, the ancient wisdom of the forest floor made manifest." As they walked deeper into the forest, Elena began to notice the mushrooms. They were everywhere, growing on fallen logs, emerging from the moss, clustered around the bases of trees. Some were tiny and delicate. Others were large and substantial, and all of them seemed to glow with their own inner light. The diversity was incredible. Mushrooms of every color, shape, and size imaginable. "Mushrooms," Maya explained, "are neither plant nor animal, but something entirely unique. They are the fruiting bodies of vast underground networks of fungal mycelium that can extend for miles beneath the forest floor. These networks are older than the trees themselves, and they serve as the communication system of the forest, connecting every plant and tree in a vast web of mutual support." Elena paused beside a fallen log that was covered in shelf fungi, their surfaces gleaming like polished wood. When she touched one gently, she felt a subtle vibration, as if the mushroom were responding to her presence. The sensation was both strange and wonderful, like touching something that was more alive than anything she had ever encountered. "These," Maya said, indicating the shelf fungi, "are Rise-He mushrooms, known as the mushroom of immortality in ancient Chinese medicine. They contain compounds that support the immune system, reduce inflammation, and promote deep, restful sleep. But more than that, they carry within them the accumulated wisdom of the forest itself." Elena looked more closely at the Rise-He mushrooms, admiring their glossy, almost lacquered appearance. They seemed to pulse gently with their own inner light, and she could feel a sense of calm emanating from them, as if they were broadcasting some frequency of peace and healing. Maya led her deeper into the forest, where the light grew even softer and the air became thick with the mysterious fragrance of countless different fungi. They came to a clearing where a circle of enormous mushrooms grew, each one as large as a dinner plate, their caps a beautiful golden brown that seemed to capture and hold the filtered sunlight. "These are lion's mane mushrooms," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They have been used for centuries to support brain function and cognitive health. Modern science has discovered that they contain compounds that actually stimulate the growth of new brain cells, helping to repair and regenerate the nervous system." Elena stared at the lion's mane mushrooms in amazement. They were beautiful in a way that was both alien and familiar. their surfaces covered in long, flowing spines that did indeed resemble a lion's mane. As she looked at them, she felt a subtle tingling in her head, as if the mushrooms were somehow communicating with her brain directly. The indigenous peoples of this region, Maya continued, understood that different mushrooms had different gifts. Some were for nourishment, others for healing, still others for expanding consciousness and connecting with the deeper mysteries of life. They saw the mushrooms as teachers, as bridges between the world of the living and the world of the unseen. They walked to the center of the circle of mushrooms, where Maya had Elena sit on a moss-covered stone. The position gave her a perfect view of the entire clearing, and she could see dozens of different varieties of mushrooms growing in perfect harmony. The air was filled with the gentle sound of dripping water and the subtle rustling of leaves, creating a natural symphony that seemed to emanate from the forest itself. "Close your eyes," Maya instructed gently. "Just breathe and let yourself feel the presence of the forest, the ancient wisdom of the mushrooms, the deep peace that comes from being connected to the earth's own healing intelligence." Elena closed her eyes and immediately felt a profound shift in her consciousness. The sounds of the forest seemed to become more vivid, more musical. She could hear the gentle creak of tree trunks, the whisper of wind through leaves, the distant call of birds, and underneath it all, a subtle humming that seemed to come from the earth itself. As she breathed, Elena felt as if she were sinking into the moss, becoming part of the forest floor. The mushrooms around her seemed to pulse with their own gentle rhythm, and she felt as if she were being held by an invisible network of connections, supported by the ancient wisdom of the fungal web that lay beneath the forest. "The mushrooms are teaching you," Maya said softly, "about decomposition and renewal, about the beauty of breaking down and building up, about the way that death and life are intimately connected. They show us that nothing is ever truly lost, that everything is constantly being recycled and renewed." Elena felt the truth of these words in her bones. The mushrooms were indeed teaching her something profound about the nature of life and death, about the way that endings were also beginnings, about the deep peace that comes from understanding that she was part of something much larger than herself. As she sat in the circle of mushrooms, Elena felt layers of old identity dissolving, like leaves decomposing on the forest floor. The anxious, driven person she had been was being broken down, composted, transformed into something richer and more nourishing. In its place, something new was growing, a sense of peace, of connection, of deep trust in the natural processes of life. "The forest teaches us about patience," Maya continued, her voice blending with the sounds of the woods. "A mushroom can wait for years for the right conditions to fruit. It doesn't rush, it doesn't force. It simply waits for the perfect moment to offer its gifts to the world. Elena opened her eyes and looked around the clearing with new vision. The mushrooms no longer seemed like separate entities, but like notes in a vast symphony of life. Each one was playing its part in the great composition of the forest, contributing its unique voice to the harmony of the whole. Maya produced a small basket and began to carefully harvest a few mushrooms, selecting only the mature specimens and leaving the younger ones to continue growing. Her movements were reverent and precise, and Elena could see that she was participating in an ancient ritual of gratitude and reciprocity. "We will prepare these tonight," Maya said, showing Elena the mushrooms she had gathered. "But first, they must be properly thanked, their gifts acknowledged. The forest gives freely, but it also asks for recognition, for gratitude, for the understanding that we are part of the great web of life." Elena nodded, feeling a deep sense of reverence for the mushrooms, for the forest, for the ancient wisdom that had been shared with her. She felt as if she had been initiated into some sacred mystery, some deeper understanding of the interconnectedness of all life. As they prepared to leave the clearing, Elena took one last look at the mushrooms growing in their perfect circle. They seemed to be glowing more brightly now, as if blessed by her presence, and she felt a profound sense of gratitude for the gifts they had shared. Not just the promise of physical nourishment, but the deeper nourishment of wisdom, of connection, of peace. The forest cathedral had taught her about the hidden networks that connect all living things, about the ancient intelligence that lies beneath the surface of the world. As they walked back through the green-filtered light, Elena felt herself becoming part of that network, connected to the vast web of life that stretched beneath her feet and above her head, a living participant in the great mystery of existence. Chapter 9: The Fermentation Cellar of Ancient Wisdom. The afternoon sun was beginning to cast long shadows through the forest as Maya led Elena toward a hillside covered in grapevines. The vines were old and gnarled, their leaves rustling softly in the gentle breeze, and heavy clusters of grapes hung from their branches like jewels in the golden light. Elena could smell the sweet, wine-like fragrance of the ripening fruit, and she felt her mouth water in anticipation. "Fermentation," Maya said as they walked between the rows of vines, "is one of humanity's oldest and most mysterious arts. For thousands of years, people have been transforming simple ingredients into complex, nourishing foods through the magic of fermentation. It's a process that requires patience, trust, and faith in the invisible forces that work to transform our food." They came to a door set into the hillside, so old and weathered that it seemed to have grown from the earth itself. The door was made of thick oak planks held together with iron bands. And when Maya pushed it open, Elena felt cool air flowing out, carrying with it the most intoxicating mixture of aromas she had ever experienced. "This is the fermentation cellar," Maya explained as they descended stone steps into the underground chamber. It has been in continuous use for over 500 years, and the very walls are alive with the beneficial bacteria and yeasts that make fermentation possible. The cellar was larger than Elena had expected, with stone walls that seemed to glow with their own inner light. The air was cool and humid, filled with the complex bouquet of fermenting foods. Along the walls were wooden shelves lined with crocks, jars, and barrels, each one containing foods in various stages of transformation. "Here," Maya said, leading Elena to a row of large ceramic crocks, "is where we make sauerkraut using cabbage that has been grown in the same soil for generations. The fermentation process breaks down the cabbage into a form that is easier to digest while creating beneficial probiotics that support gut health and overall well-being." Elena peered into one of the crocks, amazed by what she saw. The cabbage had been transformed into something entirely different, still recognizably cabbage, but somehow more concentrated, more alive. The brine that surrounded it was cloudy with beneficial bacteria, and the aroma was tangy and appetizing. "The ancient Germanic peoples," Maya continued, "discovered that fermented cabbage could prevent scurvy on long sea voyages. They didn't understand the science, but they knew that this magical food could keep them healthy when fresh vegetables were not available." Maya offered Elena a small portion of the sauerkraut on a wooden spoon. The taste was unlike anything she had ever experienced, tangy and complex, with layers of flavor that seemed to unfold on her tongue. But more than the taste, Elena felt the vitality of the fermented cabbage, as if it were alive with beneficial energy. "Fermented foods," Maya explained, "are predigested by beneficial bacteria, making their nutrients more available to our bodies. But they also introduce these helpful bacteria into our digestive system, where they work to improve our health from the inside out." They moved to another section of the cellar where barrels lined the walls, each one labeled with dates going back decades. Maya selected one barrel and drew a small amount of liquid from it into a clay cup. The liquid was deep amber in color, and it seemed to glow with its own inner light. "This is mead," Maya said, offering the cup to Elena. "Honey wine that has been fermenting for 7 years. It's one of humanity's oldest alcoholic beverages, mentioned in the earliest written records of every culture that had access to honey." Elena took a small sip of the mead and immediately felt a warm glow spreading through her chest. The flavor was complex and beautiful, sweet but not cloying, with hints of flowers and herbs, and a depth that seemed to tell the story of the honey from which it was made. But more than the alcohol, Elena felt the mead carrying with it a sense of celebration, of joy, of the ancient human tradition of marking special occasions with fermented beverages. The Vikings, Maya said, believed that mead was the drink of the gods, that it could grant wisdom and poetry to those who drank it. They weren't wrong. The fermentation process creates compounds that can have a mild euphoric effect, promoting feelings of well-being and connection. Elena felt exactly that, a sense of well-being and connection that seemed to emanate from the mead itself. The warm glow in her chest was spreading through her entire body, and she felt more relaxed and peaceful than she had in years. Maya led her to another section of the cellar, where smaller jars contained what appeared to be vegetables in various stages of fermentation. These are kimchi, she explained, fermented vegetables from the Korean tradition. Each jar represents a different season, a different combination of vegetables, a different expression of the fermentation process. Elena sampled several different varieties of kimchi, each one a revelation of flavor and texture. Some were spicy and fiery, others were mild and sweet, and all of them were alive with the energy of beneficial fermentation. She could feel the foods working in her body, supporting her digestion, flooding her system with beneficial bacteria. The Korean people have been fermenting vegetables for over 2,000 years, Maya said. They understand that fermentation is not just a method of food preservation, but a way of creating foods that are more nutritious and beneficial than the original ingredients. As they explored the cellar, Elena realized that she was experiencing something profound. The fermented foods were not just nourishing her body, they were teaching her about transformation, about the beauty of change, about the way that time and patience could transform simple ingredients into something extraordinary. Fermentation, Maya said, as if reading her thoughts, is a metaphor for life itself. We must allow ourselves to be transformed by the invisible forces that work within us. Trust in the process, even when we cannot see the results, and have faith that time will bring us to a place of greater richness and complexity. Elena nodded, feeling the truth of these words in her bones. She realized that she had been fighting her own fermentation process, resisting change, trying to control outcomes, not trusting in the natural transformation that was trying to occur within her. As they sat in the cool, aromatic cellar, surrounded by the gentle sounds of fermentation, the soft bubbling of gases, the whisper of beneficial bacteria at work, Elena felt herself surrendering to her own transformation process. Like the foods around her, she was being broken down and rebuilt, transformed into something richer and more complex than she had been before. The fermentation cellar teaches us about patience, Maya said softly. Some transformations cannot be rushed. They must be allowed to unfold in their own time, at their own pace. The most beautiful and nourishing things in life often require this kind of patience. Elena felt her breathing slow and deepen as she absorbed this wisdom. The fermented foods had given her more than nutrition. They had given her a new understanding of the transformation process, a trust in the invisible forces that were working within her to create something beautiful and nourishing from the raw materials of her experience. As they prepared to leave the cellar, Elena felt a profound sense of gratitude for the ancient wisdom of fermentation. The foods she had tasted were not just nourishing her body, they were nourishing her soul, teaching her about patience, transformation, and the beauty of allowing time to work its magic. Chapter 10: The Circle of Eternal Nourishment. As evening approached, Maya led Elena back through the gardens and groves they had visited over the past 2 days. But now, everything looked different to Elena's transformed vision. The honey jars seemed to glow with captured sunlight. The impossible fruits pulsed with their own inner light. The spice garden shimmered with aromatic energy, and the grain fields swayed in rhythm with her own breathing. "It's time," Maya said, "to bring together all the wisdom you have received, to create a feast that honors the ancient foods and their gifts of nourishment and peace." They returned to the cottage, where Maya had prepared a table in the garden beneath a canopy of stars. The table was set with simple earthenware plates and cups, and candles flickered gently in the warm evening air. Elena felt a deep sense of anticipation, as if she were about to participate in a sacred ceremony. Maya began to bring out the foods they had discovered together, each one more beautiful than Elena remembered. There was bread made from ancient grains, its crust golden and perfect. There were olives cured in the traditional way, their flavors deep and complex. There was honey that had waited 3,000 years to be tasted, its sweetness carrying the memory of flowers from ages past. "This is not just a meal," Maya said, as they arranged the foods on the table. "This is a celebration of the ancient covenant between humanity and the earth, a recognition of the gifts that have been given to us, and a promise to receive them with gratitude and awareness." Elena helped Maya arrange the fermented vegetables, the impossible fruits, the sacred water from the spring, and the wine made from grapes that had been growing for centuries. Each food seemed to vibrate with its own unique energy, and together they created a symphony of nourishment that was both physical and spiritual. As they sat down to eat, Elena felt a profound sense of completion. The journey that had begun with her desperate search for peace had led her to this moment of perfect nourishment, surrounded by foods that carried within them the wisdom of ages. Before we eat, Maya said, let us acknowledge the gifts we have received and the teachers who have shared their wisdom with us. Elena closed her eyes and felt her heart fill with gratitude. She thought of the honey that had taught her about timelessness, the impossible fruits that had shown her the generosity of nature, the spices that had awakened her memories, the ancient grains that had connected her to her ancestors, the olives that had given her the essence of peace, the sacred water that had purified her from within, the mushrooms that had taught her about interconnection, and the fermented foods that had shown her the beauty of transformation. Thank you, Elena whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you for showing me that nourishment is not just about feeding the body, but about feeding the soul. They ate slowly, savoring each bite, allowing the flavors to unfold on their tongues like poems written in taste. The bread was nutty and sweet, carrying the essence of ancient grains. The honey was liquid gold, sweet beyond description. The olives were rich and complex, their flavors deepened by centuries of cultivation. The fermented vegetables were alive with beneficial energy, and the impossible fruits burst with flavors that seemed to have been created by pure imagination. With each bite, Elena felt herself being nourished on every level, physically, emotionally, spiritually. The foods were not just providing nutrients, they were providing wisdom, connection, and a deep sense of belonging to something greater than herself. This is what food is meant to be, Maya said softly. Not just fuel for the body, but medicine for the soul, connection to the earth, and communion with the ancient wisdom that has sustained humanity for millennia. Elena nodded, unable to speak through her tears of gratitude. She felt as if she were being fed by the earth itself, as if every cell in her body were being nourished by the accumulated wisdom of ages. As they ate, Elena realized that she was no longer the same person who had walked the stone path 2 days ago. The anxious, driven woman who had been searching desperately for peace had been gently transformed into someone who understood that peace was not something to be found, but something to be received. The ancient foods had not just nourished her body, they had transformed her entire relationship with nourishment, with the earth, with herself. The circle is complete, Maya said as they finished their meal. You came here seeking peace, and you have found it. But more than that, you have discovered that peace was always within you, waiting to be awakened by the ancient wisdom of nourishment. Elena felt the truth of these words settling into her bones like warm honey. She looked around the garden, at the candles flickering in the gentle breeze, at the foods that had shared their gifts with her, at Maya's kind face, illuminated by the starlight. Everything seemed to pulse with a gentle rhythm, as if the entire world were breathing in perfect harmony. "I feel different," Elena said, her voice soft with wonder. "Not just peaceful, but transformed, like I've remembered something I had forgotten." Maya smiled, and her eyes held the depth of ancient wisdom. "You have remembered that you are part of the great web of life, connected to every plant that grows, every creature that breathes, every drop of water that flows. The ancient foods have awakened this knowing within you, and now you carry their wisdom in yourselves." As they sat in the garden, Elena felt her consciousness expanding, embracing not just her own experience, but the experiences of all the foods she had tasted. She could feel the patience of the honey, the generosity of the impossible fruits, the groundedness of the ancient grains, the peace of the olives, the purity of the sacred water, the interconnection of the mushrooms, and the transformation of the fermented foods. "This wisdom," Maya continued, "is not something you can lose. It has become part of you, woven into your very being. Wherever you go, whatever you do, you will carry with you the memory of these ancient foods and the peace they have given you." Elena nodded, feeling a deep sense of completion. The journey that had begun with exhaustion and searching had led her to this moment of perfect nourishment and rest. She realized that she no longer needed to search for peace. She had become peace, embodied it, made it her natural state. "What happens now?" Elena asked, though she felt no urgency about the answer. "Now," Maya said, "you take this wisdom back into the world. You carry the peace of the ancient foods with you, and you share it with others who are seeking what you have found. The circle expands, the wisdom spreads, and the healing continues." Elena felt a gentle sleepiness beginning to overtake her, but it was different from the exhaustion she had carried when she first arrived. This was the natural tiredness that comes after a perfect day, the drowsiness that signals the body's readiness for deep, restorative sleep. "I'm getting sleepy," she said, smiling at the sweetness of the sensation. "That is the final gift," Maya said, rising from the table. "The ancient foods have prepared your body for the deepest sleep, the most complete rest. Tonight, you will sleep not just as Elena, but as part of the great web of life, connected to every living thing, held by the wisdom of the ages." Maya led Elena to a small bed that had been prepared in the garden, surrounded by the plants and trees that had shared their gifts with her. The bed was soft and comfortable, covered with blankets that smelled of lavender and honey. As Elena settled into the bed, she felt the earth supporting her completely, holding her like a mother holds a child. "Sleep now," Maya whispered, her voice blending with the gentle sounds of the night. "Let the ancient foods work their magic in your dreams. Let their wisdom integrate into your being. Let their peace become your peace." Elena closed her eyes and immediately felt herself sinking into the deepest, most peaceful sleep she had ever known. The tastes of the ancient foods lingered on her tongue, the sweetness of eternal honey, the richness of impossible fruits, the earthiness of ancient grains, the purity of sacred water. Each taste was a lullaby, a gentle song that carried her deeper into rest. As she drifted into sleep, Elena felt herself expanding, becoming part of the garden, part of the night, part of the eternal cycle of nourishment and rest. She was no longer separate from the ancient foods. She had become them, and they had become her. The honey flowed in her veins. The grains strengthened her bones. The water purified her thoughts. And the fermented foods transformed her very essence. In her dreams, Elena walked through endless gardens of impossible beauty, tasting foods that existed beyond the imagination, each one carrying with it a new gift of peace, a new understanding of the sacred relationship between nourishment and rest. She dreamed of ancient bees dancing in meadows of flowers that bloomed for eternity, of fruits that ripened in trees that touched the stars, of grains that waved in fields that stretched to the horizon. And through it all, she felt the presence of Maya, the keeper of ancient wisdom, the guardian of the sacred foods, the gentle guide who had led her back to herself. In her dreams, Maya's voice whispered the secrets of eternal nourishment, the mysteries of sacred rest, the promise that peace was not something to be achieved, but something to be received. Elena slept deeply, dreamlessly, her body completely relaxed, her mind perfectly still, her heart overflowing with gratitude. The ancient foods had done their work, transforming her from a seeker of peace into an embodiment of peace, from someone who was searching for nourishment into someone who had become nourishment itself. The night passed in perfect stillness, the stars wheeling slowly overhead, the ancient foods continuing their work of healing and transformation. Elena slept the sleep of the deeply nourished, the completely satisfied, the perfectly at peace. Epilogue, the eternal feast. Elena awakened to the sound of birds singing and the gentle warmth of morning sunlight on her face. She opened her eyes slowly, feeling more rested than she had ever felt in her life. The exhaustion that had driven her to seek this sanctuary was completely gone, replaced by a deep, abiding sense of peace and vitality. She sat up in the garden bed, looking around at the familiar sights that had become so dear to her. The cottage with its warm, welcoming windows, the spice garden with its aromatic plants, the grain fields swaying in the morning breeze, the ancient olive trees standing sentinel in the distance. Everything looked exactly as it had, yet somehow different, as if she were seeing it all with new eyes. Maya was sitting nearby, her silver hair gleaming in the morning light, her hands cupped around a simple clay cup filled with tea. She looked at Elena with eyes full of love and understanding. And when she smiled, Elena felt the warmth of that smile spreading through her entire being. "Good morning, dear one," Maya said, her voice as gentle as always. "How do you feel?" Elena took a deep breath, assessing the changes in her body and mind. The constant tension that had lived in her shoulders was gone. The racing thoughts that had kept her awake at night were quiet. The anxiety that had driven her restless searching had been replaced by a deep trust in the natural flow of life. "I feel whole," Elena said, surprised by the completeness of the word, "like I've remembered who I really am." Maya nodded, her eyes sparkling with quiet joy. "The ancient foods have done their work. They have reminded you that you are part of the great web of life, connected to every living thing, nourished by the wisdom of the ages." Elena stood up slowly, feeling the strength and flexibility that had returned to her body. She walked to the cottage window and looked at her reflection, amazed by what she saw. Her face was relaxed and peaceful, her eyes clear and bright, her entire being radiating the kind of deep contentment that comes from being truly nourished. "I need to go back," Elena said, though the words carried no urgency or distress. "Back to my life, my responsibilities." "Of course," Maya said, rising to join her, "but you will not be going back as the same person who arrived here. You carry within you now the wisdom of the ancient foods, the peace they have given you, the understanding of true nourishment." Elena nodded, feeling the truth of these words in every cell of her body. She knew that she would never again forget the taste of eternal honey, the sweetness of impossible fruits, the grounding power of ancient grains, the purifying quality of sacred water, the interconnection revealed by the mushrooms, or the transformation offered by fermented foods. "Will I be able to find these foods again?" Elena asked, though she somehow already knew the answer. "The foods you have tasted here exist everywhere," Maya replied. "Not in their exact forms, perhaps, but in their essence. Every drop of honey carries the memory of eternity. Every fruit holds the potential for impossible sweetness. Every grain connects you to your ancestors. Every sip of pure water links you to the sacred source." Elena understood. The sanctuary was not a place separate from the world, but a way of seeing the world, a way of receiving the gifts that were always available to those who knew how to recognize them. "And the peace?" Elena asked. "Will I be able to maintain it?" Maya smiled and placed her hand over Elena's heart. "The peace is not something you must maintain. It is something you have become. The ancient foods have awakened it within you, and now it lives in your cells, flows in your blood, beats in your heart. You are peace, dear one. You always were." Elena felt tears of gratitude flowing down her cheeks. she embraced Maya, feeling the warmth and wisdom of the older woman flowing into her, becoming part of her own being. "Thank you," Elena whispered. "Thank you for showing me the way back to myself." "You found your own way," Maya replied. "I simply provided the ancient foods that reminded you of who you really are." Elena gathered her few belongings and prepared to leave the sanctuary. As she walked through the garden one last time, she felt each plant, each tree, each stone bidding her farewell. The honey jars glowed with captured sunlight. The impossible fruits pulsed with generous energy. The spice garden shimmered with aromatic blessings, and the grain fields whispered their ancient songs of abundance. At the gate, Elena turned back one last time. The sanctuary looked exactly as it had when she first arrived, timeless, peaceful, eternal. But now, she understood that the sanctuary was not just a place. It was a state of being, a way of receiving the world's gifts, a remembrance of the sacred relationship between nourishment and peace. "Remember," Maya called softly, "the ancient foods are always with you. In every meal, in every bite, in every moment of gratitude, you can access their wisdom. You carry their peace within you always." Elena nodded, feeling the truth of these words settling into her bones like warm honey. She walked through the gate and began her journey back to the world. But she was no longer the same person who had walked the stone path days ago. She carried within her the essence of eternal nourishment, the promise of unending peace, the understanding that rest was not something to be earned, but something to be received. As she walked, Elena felt the ancient foods working within her, their wisdom integrating into her very being. The honey sweetened her thoughts. The impossible fruits filled her with wonder. The ancient grains grounded her steps. The sacred water purified her intentions. The mushrooms connected her to all life, and the fermented foods transformed her into someone new while honoring who she had always been. The path ahead stretched before her, leading back to her responsibilities, her relationships, her daily life. But now, she walked with the knowledge that every meal was a sacred opportunity, every bite a chance to reconnect with the ancient wisdom of nourishment, every moment of eating a doorway to peace. Elena smiled as she walked, feeling the gentle weight of the ancient food's wisdom in her heart. She knew that wherever she went, whatever she did, she would carry with her the memory of eternal honey, the taste of impossible fruits, the nourishment of sacred grains, the purity of blessed water, the interconnection of all living things, and the transformative power of patience and time. The sanctuary had given her more than peace. It had given her a new way of being in the world, a way of receiving life's gifts with gratitude and awareness, a way of finding the sacred in the simple act of nourishment. She was no longer seeking peace because she had become peace, no longer searching for nourishment because she had learned to recognize it everywhere. As Elena walked toward her new life, she carried with her the eternal feast of the ancient foods, the unending banquet of peace and wisdom that would sustain her always. The journey back to herself was complete, but the journey of sharing this wisdom with the world was just beginning. And in the sanctuary behind her, Maya stood at the gate, watching Elena disappear into the distance, her heart full of joy for another soul that had remembered the ancient truth that peace is not found but received. That nourishment is not just for the body, but for the soul. And that the sacred foods of the earth are always ready to welcome home those who have forgotten how to rest. The ancient foods remained, waiting patiently for the next weary traveler, the next seeking soul, the next person who needed to remember the eternal truth of nourishment and peace. The honey glowed in its ancient jars. The impossible fruits ripened on their magical trees. The sacred water flowed from its eternal spring. And the wisdom of the ages lived on in every grain, every olive, every mushroom, every fermented gift of the earth. The sanctuary endured, as it always had, as it always would, a place where the ancient foods shared their gifts with anyone ready to receive them, where the weary could find rest, where the seeking could find peace, and where the hungry could discover the true meaning of nourishment. In the end, Elena's journey had brought her full circle, from exhaustion to peace, from seeking to finding, from hunger to satisfaction. The ancient foods had done their work, as they always did, as they always would, transforming another soul with their timeless wisdom, their eternal gifts, their promise of unending nourishment and rest. The story ended where it began, with the eternal cycle of seeking and finding, of hunger and satisfaction, of exhaustion and rest. But now, there was one more person in the world who carried the ancient wisdom, one more soul who had learned to receive the gifts of the earth with gratitude and awareness, one more heart that beat with the rhythm of eternal peace. And the ancient foods waited still, patient as always, ready to share their gifts with the next traveler, the next seeker, the next soul who needed to remember that peace is not something to be achieved, but something to be received, not something to be earned, but something to be given, not something to be found, but something to be awakened from within. The eternal feast continued, as it always had, as it always would, nourishing body and soul, connecting earth and heaven, bridging the gap between seeking and finding, between hunger and satisfaction, between exhaustion and the deep, peaceful rest that comes from being truly, completely, eternally nourished.